Moses' history lesson. Last week we started a new study on the book of Deuteronomy from the Bible, and we looked at its bigger context. Wow, this week we look at its author, which is Moses.
And Moses seems to be the greatest prophet and spiritual leader that Israel has ever had. That's why when looking into the history of things that happened to the nation of God, Moses sticks above all with his leadership qualities. He's inspirational, he's wise, he's obedient to the Lord, and very importantly, he's very humble, regardless of all the glorious moments of his achievements. It's hard to find such a leader nowadays, I'm thinking, isn't it?
I would love to be able to sit down and to have a chat with Moses. I mean, can you imagine what he has experienced? His journey and his life is mind-blowing, of course, with all the things. But even more is his personal relationship with God. He spoke with God face to face. When the Israelites saw Moses after he had spent some time with God, they saw the difference in his look and in his face. They could recognize that he has been talking to God.
How tricky it is to be a leader. Moses was sent to represent God for a mission, but at the same time, he was one of the Israelites, with one hand touching the heavens confidently, and with the other hand touching everyday people and their earthly lives. How do you balance those two separate worlds of belonging? Here's an answer for any leader out there. Humbly. Take the story with the golden calf, for example. Moses was righteously mad at the pagan act of his brother and sister and his people, representing God. However, he humbly offered to God that he loses his own spot in the book of heaven. If only they, the people, can have mercy and get mercy and live on. I see the faithfulness, the love, the consideration from him toward both sides of the spiritual conflict, God and people. Very often I see leaders either embracing God and in such a way excusing their disregard for family, friends, and people under their influence, or vice versa, disregarding God for people's and personal gain. What a great and powerful choice of God when selecting Moses.
I want to jump back for a moment on the conversations that Moses had with God. Think for a moment. God showed him the beginning of our world, the creation. How amazing is that, to be able to witness all this? He talked to him about sin and the great controversy. God led Moses through history, and Moses wrote all of this for us today, but I still ponder on this time that Moses had and what could have been happening in his head and heart. Then God tried to explain the future to Moses. He showed him salvation, the cost that Jesus had to pay. Everything in human history culminated there, and it is the line through the entire Bible. And even though Moses didn't understand everything, it has been some crazy, amazing moments of conversations and experiences. And in all this, Moses got so immersed in it, so unified with God's mission that he started reflecting God's love for the people, God's readiness to sacrifice himself for the people. It's big. So, opening the book of Deuteronomy, we should remember that this is also in the heart of this book. This week we look at the first 3 chapters, and it's Moses talking to the Israelites, ready to cross Jordan for a second time and to enter the promised land. Moses wants to make sure that they remember how they got there.
Moses understood God. He grasped his ideas and his plans. God said, for example, 40 years, and it was 40 years that Moses led his people with no complaint. In fact, he appreciated God's special care to the point that the Israelites lacked nothing. Their clothes did not wear and their feet did not swell. What else better could a leader ask for? He was able to adapt as a leader to a new direction and new unexpected instructions. He continued to love the nation and the Lord unconditionally.
Learning to trust God and to accept dependence on Him is very difficult for us who are so used to depend on ourselves and to follow our visions and our understandings. Learning this lesson for Israel was also very painful.
And remember Kadesh Barnea? Why would God want to continue moving forward with people who don't want that, who are openly revolting against Him and against such an idea, who prefer to go back to Egypt, back to these other gods and these other customs? Why would God want something like that? God even came up with a pretty good idea, by the way. Make a nation out of Moses and move on, just with him and his family. He would have fulfilled his promise to Abraham in this case, wouldn't have he? But Moses was one of them. He was one of the people. Couldn't swallow the death of his brothers and sisters. Also, God's idea to demonstrate his glory in his chosen nation was going to be wiped out in a blink of an eye. All the respect and the knowledge from the surrounding nations gone. Moses stood again between the heavens and the earthly people with such a dignity and strength, a worthy intercessor. And I know I'm repeating myself, but how amazing it is that God did pick the right man for his mission.
We're just opening the book of Deuteronomy, and there are many important lessons for us there. There are also some difficult to understand things, like why did Israel have to completely exterminate some people? Men, women, children. It's not an easy fact to swallow. All we know is that their iniquity had reached certain limits. God couldn't do it before they had crossed that line, but there is a line of no return. And this is why we had the flood. This is why we had the burn down of Sodom and Gomorrah. This is why some nations had to be exterminated. It's not a pleasant subject. It's not something that we can completely explain, but it's part of the journey. Join us again next week to continue with the study, The Everlasting Covenant.